Hi, everybody. Welcome to Discover College Soccer. I'm excited today to be joined by Coach Tim Penrod from SUNY Canton in New York. Coach, how are you?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. I grew up in Ohio, so the Canton I'm used to is not the Canton where you're hanging out. But
No, a little bit
I,
different
yeah,
location.
well, I had to put it on the map, and when people talk about upstate New York, that's what they're talking about, right?
You
Way
can't get
upstate.
more upstate than us. We
All right.
are, yeah, we're about 15 miles from the Canadian border. So when we recruit kids from out of state, we get a lot of oh, how close to New York City are you? And it's about a 5 or 6 hour trip. So like
Like
to
we're
get
much,
that out there right at the beginning.
hey, we're closer to Montreal and Ottawa, right?
Yes. Yep. Montreal is about 2 hours. Ottawa is about an hour and 15 minutes.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I blew through Watertown once on my way up to my wife's family's place way up near Pembroke, and so
Okay.
I've been up that way once or twice, just not didn't keep going. Or
Yeah, you
I went.
didn't make the turn off at 81.
No, I didn't. But that's cool though. I mean, it's beautiful part of the country. But let's talk a little soccer first here. So you guys are Division 3. So
Yeah.
when is it that you usually start looking at players or hearing from possible players about joining your team?
So the recruiting timelines changed really drastically over the last decade. Really, I've been a head coach for 15 years now. But right now the majority of kids we're hearing from are in their junior year. There are a couple of sophomores that are starting that process of reaching out. Occasionally, we get a kid who's a freshman, and we send a polite reply back. But basically, you're going to change your mind 15 times probably between now and your junior year, let alone senior year, about what you want to do. So we normally start talking to kids when they're juniors in high school, sort of towards the winter of their junior year. That's when we really kind of start focusing in on those kids. We try to be done with our recruiting class by mid-March, early April every year, so that way we can focus on any last minute kids or last minute needs that come up, but again, really turn our attention in the spring to the following year's class.
So on a typical week, I know it ebbs and flows, but on average, how many inbound contacts do you think you get in a week?
So what it really depends on whether or not there's an upcoming showcase or tournament, something
Right.
like that. So like Jefferson Cup was this past weekend in Richmond. So last week we got bombarded with a lot of sophomores and juniors and a couple of seniors still looking. But I would say, it can vary. Like last week, I probably got 75 to 100 emails,
Yeah.
which is a lot, I would say, in the quieter weeks. So like this week, we're getting the follow up from Jefferson Cup, but next week, we'll probably it's still going to be 25 plus per week.
And what do you like to see in a first communication from a recruit?
I like a little bit of individualization. The mass emails that say, "Dear Coach, I'm really interested in your program. I see you're but they never really mention specifics. We kind of weed those out. But just, hey, I'm interested in SUNY Canton. I think I'd like to study this, making sure that it's a major that lines up with us. And, a little bit of highlight video maybe, but I'm not necessarily looking for a full on history of what you've done with soccer since you were 5 years old. It's nice when it's just sort of a general conversation starter and we get to learn some of those things about, why you have this passion for soccer or why you have a passion for an academic program. We like to learn that a little bit as we go through our recruiting process and get to know the kids.
Makes sense. Well, you mentioned get more emails around tournament time. What are some of those tournaments that you make sure that you're at, year in, year out? Where do you like to see players the most?
So we're in a little bit of a unique situation in that, we're a state university. So the vast majority of our kids do come from New York. So we do hit a lot of the major in-state tournaments, Massapequa College Showcase, which is in December of every year. We're almost always at that. There's a big event in Saratoga Springs called Mad Dog Mania in July or June. I'm sorry. We go to that every year. We do generally every other year we'll go down to at least one of the EDP events in New Jersey. We have, there's some smaller events that for us, as we compete with other state schools for so many kids, we don't always go to the biggest events either. We go sometimes to the ones that are a little bit more off the beaten path. Some people say, oh, well, it's not the premier teams or the ECNL teams, and that's fine because there's other schools that are all fighting over those kids. I'll go somewhere and find a diamond in the rough for a kid who, they can't afford to play for some of those big clubs, but it doesn't mean they're any less of a quality player or a quality kid for our program. So, what we really try and do, like I said, is it's about maximizing events. There's a organization in Albany, New York, Afram Sports, and he runs 2 to 3 college showcases per year. And he has a couple of clubs that run out of there too. And so we make our way down there. I was just down there last week for a single game, but we went to see a kid we'd been talking to, and he ultimately committed about 24 hours after we went down to see him again. So, for us, it's about finding kids that fit our mold and just going where we have a proven track record of that.
Oh, makes sense. So what about camps? Do you guys do ID camps? Do you work at other schools' camps? Is that a good way for you to see players as well?
Camps are massive on my end. I started running at the college. We run our own ID camp specific to us. We don't invite other colleges. So we really focus on the kids that we're interested in or that are interested in us. We normally run 2 per year. We aren't, we're not making millions of dollars the way some of these companies are on camps. We charge anywhere from $50 to $75. We actually just, situation being what it is right now, inflation's kind of crushing everybody. We actually dropped our cost down. So we're running one on May 7th and it's $50 for the day. I do some work in the summers where I do travel, or my assistant will travel. There's a really big event, and I hope you don't mind me giving them a plug, but New York ID camps that's run at Cortland State. That has basically every SUNY school. So there's 64 SUNY campuses, counting the junior colleges. He normally has 40 to 50 colleges at this event. And so a lot of the New York State private schools and even out of state private schools in the region, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, like they'll come to this. And, there's 200 plus kids, but you literally, you're just constantly, you get to train. First of all, it's not just go out and play, but you actually get a sense of, being comfortable with the team, and you're coached by the college coaches that are with you the whole time. But it gives us a great chance to see kids. So that one, as I look at this year's incoming class, that camp paid off enormously for us for 2022.
Awesome. Well, when you're looking at players, whether it's at a tournament or a camp, what's your kind of checklist, your hierarchy of what you're looking for in a player, whether it's on the field or off the field?
So I'm going to start with the sort of off-field or non-soccer things, because we have flat out eliminated kids, and I think this is important for people to hear. Your body language when you're playing, if things go badly, tells me a lot. And if your team gives up a goal and you're berating your teammates, or you're kicking at the grass and, throwing up your hands in disgust, that, and I get it, we all do it to an extent sometimes, but you have to remember the situation you're in. You're being evaluated. And if you're being evaluated and you're still acting that way, that's a little bit of a red flag for me. When we go out to recruit kids, I try to get to games at least 30 minutes before it starts so I can watch you warm up. And I stick around after. I watch what you do when you walk off the field. How do you interact with your family? We had a kid a couple of years ago that we stopped recruiting because of the way he treated his family on his visit. That stuff matters. And, I'm sure there's people out there that'll say, well, if you're a good enough player, none of that matters. I don't, for some people that might be true, but for me, we have a really strong culture in our program, and we want to maintain that with people who are going to be bought in and be good characters first. The other piece of that, and it's a small thing, but kids, when you're doing a highlight video, edit your music. I had one again a couple years ago that came through, a tremendous player who would have been a great fit for us. But his highlight video had more vulgarity in it than a George Carlin skit. And I was kind of like, I just can't. And I just stopped watching literally after about 30 seconds of his video. And we moved on. So again, it's small stuff, but I think that matters as far as when we go and, we're assessing their on-field skill. Again, this will be different for everybody, but for me, I'm looking for a kid who fits into our style of play. So we try to play a high pressing up tempo style. So I want somebody that has some explosiveness. I want somebody that has some athleticism, that has a willingness to get stuck in and work on both sides of the ball. I think we would all take, and I'm a big Barca fan, if I could go out and recruit 25 Pedris or Gavis right now, I absolutely would, but that's not the case. So, we look for kids that are going to fit in and fill a role more than anything. Having some technical ability and quality first touch is huge. And we're honest with kids. If we say, hey, athletically, you're going to fit right in, but your first touch needs a drastic amount of work, we're going to tell kids that. And we don't tell them that to cut them down, but simply to say, hey, if you want to make it in our program, this is what we need to see. So things like that matter. And I think the other big thing, and we don't get a full picture of this until they get on campus sometimes, but their coachability is probably the number one determining factor in a kid. And so we do a lot of character reference check, club coach, high school coach, even guidance counselors and teachers if we have a connection to that school district. We want to find out, how does this person take feedback and being coached? Are they receptive to it? Or are they, stubborn and not willing to change? Those are all really important factors to me.
No, it makes sense. Yeah, and it's always good reminders for kids is as much as I tell kids a lot of times, they look at me like, oh, okay, yeah, right. So then I can just play them the tape and it makes it so much easier.
Right.
So, you guys are D3, so there's no athletic money happening. But it's a state school in New York. So that means hopefully it's not a, bajillion dollars, but let's just talk in terms of overall scholarship and price picture. It's always good for people to hear, what's available from an academic side or other things. What can people expect if they're looking, whether they're a New Yorker or a non-New Yorker, if they were coming to you?
So, one of the big things is first of all, there is merit scholarship funding available. It's not a huge pot of money. So, private schools are always going to give more money, and that's just a fact because they have more money to give. For us, one thing we stress is, when you look at your financial aid package, what is your actual percentage discount? Not the amount, but the percentage that it's taking off, because that's, if we're $20,000 a year and we give you $5,000, and a school at $70,000 a year gives you $30,000, that's great. There's still $40,000 like that, so you have to take that into consideration. I think the vast majority of the kids in our program that receive merit scholarships have a GPA over a 3.4. On occasion, there are some leadership and community service grants or scholarships that are available through the college as well. So that opens up doors for kids that don't have that 3.4 or higher. I think one of the other things is you have to look at some of the programs you're going into. If a school started a new program, so we introduced a new mechatronics program within our engineering degrees. And that's it's an important field with a great job outlook, but it's a new program. So if a student with a 3.6 comes in, they get into that program, the odds are the scholarship committee may take that into consideration. The biggest thing that kids struggle to understand is they apply for the scholarships and all they want to do is write about sports and they want to write about soccer. We're a school, and there's a lot of schools like this, where if you write about that in your essay, the school can't award you any funding, because if there's ever an audit by the NCAA, it looks like you're a soccer player and now you got awarded all this money. The NCAA says, hold on, you're Division III, you can't do that, and it ends up a whole mess. So but the nice part is we're affordable for, really affordable for everybody. I think when you look at the cost of higher education across the country, even for out of state kids, our total cost is about $30,000 a year before financial aid. And, if you look at it, like I don't know of a private school in this country that's less than 40,000 right now. I'm sure there's a couple out there, but, we're going to be competitive with the out of state kids. But for the in-state kids, your tuition is less than $7,000 a year. So it's great for in-state kids. And that's why we focus the vast majority of our recruiting on kids from New York State. I've got 3 kids on the team right now. I've got a kid from North Carolina, a kid from Jersey, and a kid from Idaho on the team right now. But again, that's 3 out of 27. So the vast majority are New York State kids.
It makes sense. Well, let's talk more about the school. You mentioned one of the cool engineering programs, but besides that, and besides, the location and all the stuff that I can find by clicking on the website, give me the nitty gritty. What's some of the cool, awesome things about the school that most people aren't going to know or find out from the web?
So I think the thing that we undersell, and it's just tough to bring out, I think, in a website, but the value and practicality of our degree programs. So Canton is considered a technology-based institution. So that doesn't necessarily mean computers and microchips and that stuff. It's all about hands-on learning. So all of our engineering programs, like kids are in labs first semester of college. You find out if you want to be, I've got a bunch of kids on my team right now that want to be electrical engineers, and they're building batteries and running circuits, and they're doing that when they're 18 years old. And I think the cool part about that is if it's not for you, you find out before you get 3 years into a program and you're like, oh God, now I got to start over. Like that's a huge step back at that point. And so, our engineering program is part of that. We have a vet tech and vet science program where we partner with the local humane societies, but we also have essentially a small scale clinic set up on campus where the students are able to, to go through part of their program right on campus. Our business programs, and I know a lot of schools have business programs, but they're all about creating real world experiences. If you're in one of the finance classes and you're focusing on investing, like you have a semester to try and make $100,000 in that class, but instead of just here, read about it in a textbook, understand the theory, because when you go out into the real world, and I know, Matt, you know this, but theory only gets you so far. Like the real world doesn't operate on theories. There's always these little nuances and little changes. So, creating an atmosphere where kids can think on their feet is incredibly important. And I think our faculty do such an awesome job of that in all of the degrees. The sports management is run by 2 former college athletic department admins. So again, you're out in your work, you're being instructed by people who have done it. Our Homeland Security program is run by 2 former FBI field agents. Like you want to talk about guys that have probably really good experience and knowledge to share. That's who we want teaching those, teaching the next generation of that. So it's not always about, who's gone to school the longest and who has the most PhDs and most papers published. And I really think that's something that is special about our school is we just have so many faculty that are truly experts in their field and enjoy teaching about that. And they're not worried about, they're not always so focused on the getting published and getting that terminal degree. I have to have this thing. I think that's one of the problems in higher ed in some cases right now is, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with people that go and get those degrees and do those things, but there's another side to being able to teach our college students.
Yeah, especially if they've only ever been at an academic institution and never seen anything else outside of that. It's very different. Yeah, I 100% agree. Well, you mentioned some sounds like some pretty rigorous academics and the beauty of Division III. I mean, is the student really is first in student athlete, but I guess what specifically at your school, what kinds of how do your student athletes balance the sports and the academics, and what kind of support mechanisms are there in place at your school to help with that?
Yeah, so we just received it in the mail about a month ago, but we had gotten the United Soccer Coaches Team Academic Award for having a GPA above a 3.0 for the last spring and last fall. And traditionally at our college, our student athlete GPA is anywhere from zero point 0.2 to zero point 0.4 higher than the non-student athlete GPA. So I think because you're a student athlete, you tend to have a better sense of how to manage your time, how to balance between practices and homework and that sort of thing. I think one of the other things that Canton does a really good job of is the support services in place for our students. And we have our own tutoring lab, and we have both professional tutors, which are a lot of the time run by our faculty themselves who donate time there. And then we also have a peer tutoring program and mentoring program. So if you're struggling in a class, you actually have the option of going to, if you're more comfortable asking a student for help, you have that option. Or if you want to go to the professor or an adult, you have that avenue available for you. We have our EOP program at the college is really strong for students who qualify. We have the federally funded TRIO program, which again provides more academic support for students who qualify for it. We have our accommodative services for students who continue to take advantage of what's provided for them in IEPs that they've had assigned to them. And so the biggest thing that I think for us is within the athletic department, you have a culture of coaches who want to help as well. And all of us in the department, we all come from different backgrounds. I have a degree in social studies education, so I've got no problem helping my kids with history, sociology, any of the social science courses. I was just short on a minor in English, so I'm happy to help edit papers, that sort of thing. I tell my kids if they want a grade lower than an F, I'll help them with math because that's not my forte. But actually, within our tutoring center, we have a separate math lab that's staffed by math professors on campus. So we really go out of our way to make sure students are set up for success. And this coming fall will be my 10th year coaching at Canton, or no, yes, 10th year. And I've never once in my 10 years had a professor turn a kid away who's come to them and asked for help.
That's
So
great. Well, so let's in balancing, sports and the classroom stuff. Tell me, what does a typical week during the season look like in terms of getting up, class, practice, games? How does it all work probably over an average week?
yeah, so I mean, right now we're traditionally playing games on a Tuesday or Wednesday, and then a game on Saturday. So, game days are obviously, you're still in class up until basically 90 minutes to 2 hours before you're expected to be in class, at which point you get excused. Uh, but, so the start of the week really depends on when that first game is. If it's a Tuesday, Monday's practice isn't anything too crazy. We really encourage our guys to get their classes done earlier in the day whenever possible. Sometimes labs don't allow that to happen, but Monday and let's say it's a Wednesday, Saturday week for simplicity's sake, Monday's our first day back from the weekend. So we get the guys sort of reactivated and focused, and we start introducing, the main concepts we want to focus on to prepare that we want to implement for Wednesday. We will do a little bit of formation work in that. And then, that carries over into Tuesday where it's a little bit more of a walkthrough maybe, but again, making sure the kids' bodies are activated, their minds are focused, giving them something a little bit in the warm up that forces them to warm up their mind and their body type of deal. So they got to think. It can't just be mindless activity as far as I'm concerned. And then, Wednesday we play. If we're traveling, we might be cutting out of classes a little bit early. We do a lot of our midweek home games at night, so kids are missing a lot less class time, which is important. But it's literally, as far as the day goes, they're up, they have breakfast, some of them I'm sure are just running right to class. But the nice part about college is it's not a structured 6-hour day like it is when you go to high school. You might have 15 credits, but you might have 2 classes Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 3 classes Tuesday and Thursday, and that's not a lot of time. Like, that frees up a lot of your time. So we do, the nice part is a lot of the professors, they make a big push on this. Like all of our guys are basically done with class by 3 o'clock on Friday. So we practice a little bit earlier Fridays. And then Saturday we play. Sundays are off day. The only time Sunday isn't an off day is if we play. And occasionally we do get a Saturday, Sunday doubleheader in there. If we're traveling a long ways, we might play 2 games in a weekend. Or the odd occasion, I think it's happened once in the 9 seasons I've been at Canton, where we have a reschedule for a Monday. Then okay, we adjust it so we
Yeah.
train on Sundays.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. Well, you mentioned travel. So, you know, looking at your schedule, most of your games are New York, but as we all know, New York is a big state. And like you mentioned, you're real far away from New York City. So how does travel kind of factor into everything, or what's your kind of typical radius, your conference radius, that kind of thing?
So the conference we're in, the North Atlantic Conference, actually split into 2 divisions this past year because there's schools from New York, Vermont, and Maine. So we play 2 crossover weekends with the schools from Maine and one of the schools from Vermont. So we go to Maine for a weekend and play 2 games, and then there's a weekend where 2 teams from Maine come and play us at home. Other than that, our Delhi and Johnson are both about 4-hour trips, 4.5-hour trips, and those are always on weekends. So our non-conference schedule, the nice part is there's actually 4 colleges within 15 minutes of each other up here. So we have 3 non-conference games that might as well be home games as far as we're concerned if we go there. So that's always nice to have those teams on our schedule and save us a little bit of travel. And it's nice because you get a little bit of a local rivalry feeling in it as well. Most of our weekday travel, though, we try to keep less than 3 hours. There are, of course, occasionally exceptions. I know this coming fall, we've got a long trip out to Western New York midweek, but for the most part, we do try to minimize travel midweek wherever possible.
Oh, that's good. Well, let's talk more about the soccer side of things and the team stuff. So you mentioned it, I think 27 on your roster. I mean, is that what you typically like to carry? What's your kind of typical roster size?
So if I had to put a number on an ideal size, I would say 28. Anywhere 26 to 30, I'm generally pretty comfortable. And I know to some people that might seem like a lot, but if I've learned nothing else in the last 15 years, injuries happen, illness happens, dips in form happen, and having depth is just an absolute thing you have to have if you want to be competitive late in the year. And it takes me back when I was at my previous school. We went to the postseason as the 5 seed, so we had to travel 4 hours away to play the 4 seed on a Wednesday. We won that game, came home, had to play Friday at the 1 seed, which was 3 hours away, won that game, overnighted, came home the next day, had to travel 2.5 hours away to the 2 seed who had won the other side of the bracket. And so, and we played over the course of those 3 games, one of which went into double overtime and PKs. I played 14 kids. It was no surprise by the time we got to the final on Sunday that like our guys just couldn't function, but that we had 14 effective players at that point in the year. So, we carry a little bit larger number, and, kids, oh, well, I'm not going to get hurt. Somebody's going to get hurt along the way. It's just the truth. So if I can carry, like I said, 26 to 30, I'm pretty happy. That gives us the opportunity to also develop kids a little bit. And we tell kids when we recruit them, hey, your first year, you're going to be focused on learning how to play at this level. And, some kids don't want to buy into that, and that's fine, but we don't tell them that after they've already come in. We're very upfront about that with our kids, but that way they have an opportunity to grow and develop without the pressure of having to perform. And I think that's important. In the last 5 years, I don't know that I've asked a freshman to play 90 minutes a game, because if it's not going well, they get frustrated and they don't grow, they don't develop. That's not good for them.
Yeah.
And that has other ramifications off the field. So, we're all about carrying a roster that allows us to be deep, but also develop the kids and keep the kids we have healthy.
It's good. Well, besides the roster size, what's the staff size? What other soccer staff do you have? What are their roles on the team, et cetera?
So I'm really fortunate that I've got a lot of young alumni that are still kind of around the area and who want to remain involved, even if it's as a volunteer status. So I have one paid assistant who he does a lot of different things for us. He recruits. He's on the road doing that. He helps with fundraising. It's his first college job, and this past spring he's really taken on the practice development component. He's in charge of our entire activation and technical phase of training every day. And that's something he's going to continue to have because he's just absolutely crushing it with that. And I can sort of take a step back and watch guys as they're warming up now, which is good. Um, he does a lot for me in game, just in terms of, bouncing ideas. If, we need to make a tactical change, hey, this is what I'm thinking. Do you think that's, am I on the right path, do you think, or am I going kind of crazy here on the sideline? So he's awesome about that. Our volunteers, a lot of them just come in, and more than anything, they're supportive of the student athlete who's going through the stress of being in classes and the social pressures of being in college. And it gives them an outlet of someone that recently went through that and has been able to find a way down that path successfully. So that means a lot. I also do have a goalkeeper coach, Mark. Sorry, I didn't mean to forget you in there. And again, he has a full-time job, but what we do is we're able to structure his time with our goalkeepers around their class schedules. So he works with them outside of our team training. So they're getting their individualized attention, which is great. He's a former Watford youth team player and made his way up to the first team before he was injured, and then got a real job like the rest of us. But having that for our kids is just huge, and that's literally what his role is. That's what he wants to do, and so I'm like, hey, it's yours, and he's been with me for a number of years.
It sounds great. So how would you, I mean, you mentioned style of play a little bit earlier, but like, how would you describe your style of coaching, and then any more about the style of play? And you did also talk about the culture of the team. How does that all kind of combine into what
Yeah,
you guys are
so I
doing?
think, for me, in terms of a style of coaching, I like to try and be as flexible as I can. And the importance of that is, yeah, I have an idea of how I want to play, but when we recruit kids. We try to recruit, kids that just fit how we want to play, but that doesn't always happen. Sometimes, we'd all love a 6'4" target forward who weighs 180 pounds, but that's, not always in the books. So, you take the kids who have a good skill set and are coachable and fit into the culture, which I'll touch on here in a bit. But it's being flexible within our style of play, regardless of who you have on the field. I think you can play an up-tempo style, which we try to do. I think the other thing that's important when we talk about flexibility is you have to recognize who you're playing against. If you're playing a top 25 program, you're going to approach them differently than top 25 non-conference game versus a league game with the regular season title on the line. You approach those games very differently. So we talk to our players a lot about, this is what the team we're about to play does. We show it to them on film. We say, this is how we're going to try and counteract what they do. And this is how it's going to adjust what our overall theme is, whether it's a lower line of contention, whether it's, pressing the back line a little bit higher because we feel like they don't have the pace in the forwards to beat us if they go over the top. If they were playing a team that high presses a lot early on, maybe being a little bit direct in the first 10 minutes so they have to drop off of us and then we can get some space to operate. So it's really about that, having that type of flexibility that's important for us. When we talk about the culture of our program, I think the biggest thing that I take away, and I think if you talk to recruits who have met with our players or the current players themselves, we have a culture where it doesn't matter what the situation is, but everyone else on the team and in the program wants you to be successful. If it's academics, they want you to do well. If it's soccer, they want you to do well. If it's socially, they want you to do well. Job interviews, all that sort of stuff. And yeah, there's guys that are obviously competing for playing time. That's always a part of it. but no one, we've established a culture where guys don't take it personally if someone plays over them. It's like, okay, they got the nod today. My job is to be supportive of that, to celebrate that, and be ready to go if they can't anymore. And part of the reason we've been able to achieve that is just the strong line of communication that we have between the coaching staff and our student athletes. You know, if we're gonna if a guy's been playing and all of a sudden we're gonna make a change, we don't just drop it on him on game day in the locker room before. We talk to him days in advance, like, hey, this is what we're thinking. You know, and this is why we're thinking it. I think, you know, giving them a why and a rationale or a reason to what we're doing plays such a huge role in them buying in, because then they can say, okay, if that's the case, I know what I have to do to get myself back to where I'm the guy on the field. So that's, again, I think that's a big reason why we've been so successful in the things we've been doing with our guys.
Oh, that's great. Well, we're talking here in April, and I know the NCAA restricts what you can and can't do here in the spring, but what does your off-season program look like?
So we're very fortunate that one of the programs we have at the college is health and fitness promotion, which is a really fancy way of saying exercise science. So we have 2 interns that have been working with our guys since they came back for the start of spring semester. So they're actually doing their internships with men's soccer. One of them is actually one of my outgoing seniors. So, you know, the guys start working on fitness and lifting, speed and agility. They've been doing that since the first week of February. And then they've continued that as we've started our spring season. We're in our 3rd week of spring ball right now. So we practice 15 days over 5 weeks with a play date at the end. So they have to find a balance between, you know, you got to do 2 lifts a week, you got to do 2 speed and agility or fitness sessions a week. You have 3 practices a week, but you can, you know, there can be overlap. You can set your days off, you know, that sort of thing. But we allow our kids to build their lifting around their own schedule. So if, you know, I got a couple of kids, I've got a kid who's in our nursing program and he's in clinical from like 11 until 7 every single day. So he goes in and he lifts at 6 or 7 in the morning. And you know, but that's what fits his schedule, rather than saying, hey, I need you at this time. And because we have restrictions on that, you know, they're monitoring their own lifts. But the nice part is, like, I work, one of my secondary responsibilities is in the fitness center. So I'm constantly seeing who's coming in and out, you know, throughout each week. So,
Yeah.
but you know, it's the thing for me in the spring is it's really about, you know, what else do they need to be involved in? Are they involved in other clubs? Are they looking to study abroad? And you know, I work very hard to create a culture where they can explore those other aspects of college life outside of athletics, because in the fall, like when they get on campus in August to when they go home in November for Thanksgiving, they're basically, you know, we're running them nonstop at that point. So it's important, I think, they get to experience the other things that college has to offer them.
No, that's great. Well, we've covered a lot of ground here. Don't want to take up too much of your time. So last question, I always end the same. What didn't we talk about? What else is there that you want to say, that you, or reiterate, or that we missed that you want people to know?
So many things. No, again, and we talked a little bit before we started recording, but thank you for doing this and helping share, you know, what's out there about college soccer. I think that's so incredibly important. For kids that are looking to play in college, I would encourage you to do a couple of things. One, own your own recruiting process. You know, you go out, you do the legwork. Don't ask somebody to do it for you. But if there's a school you're interested in, take the time to get to know that school. Go and see a game. Go ask if you can watch a practice. Go on YouTube, or just, you know, Google search a team. There's going to be highlights and game footage out there. One of the things that I always find ironic is when a kid says, hey, I really think I can play at your level. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. You know, what games have you seen? And they're like, well, I've never seen a game. And it's like, then how do you know you can play at this level? Maybe you can, but maybe you also can't. So I think that's really important. I think the other thing, and sort of words of encouragement, is that there's a school out there for just about anybody that wants to compete collegiately. It might not be UVA or UConn or Stanford or something like that. And for some of you, it might be starting at a junior college, and that there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Not to sermonize or anything, but we live in a world where we're always, social media forces us to compare ourselves to others. Don't worry about what your teammates or your club mates or anybody else is doing. You follow your path. And I think if you do that, you're going to find a lot more success, a lot more joy in what you do. And you'll have a tremendous time in college if you do that.
Amen. Well, Coach, I really appreciate the time. Wish you the best of luck this coming season. Hopefully we'll get a few people to see this and reach out to you about Canton. And again, nothing but the best for you guys. All right.
Thanks so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.